Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is trust and transparency, the power of trust, the power of Truckstop's network with my friend Shawn Rasmor. How's it going, Shawn?
Oh, doing great. How are you doing, Joe?
Doing great. So, Shawn, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yes, so I'm Shawn Rasmor. I am the Principal Product Manager for Compliance at Truckstop.com. And I'm calling from Boise, Idaho. We've got the freeway going behind me. They're always moving, and our job is to make it safe and a great industry for everybody to operate.
So what expressway is that behind you?
This is I-84.
Oh, a big one.
Yeah, big one. Yeah, big interstate.
Shawn, what does Truckstop do? Who do they serve?
Yeah, so great question. Truckstop, we were founded in 1995. It started out as Internet Truckstop, as a load board for carriers and brokers to find each other, a spot marketplace. It was actually the first internet load board. And that's still our prominent business here at Truckstop is our load board. But we also serve other aspects of the freight transportation lifecycle. We have tools that help you with visibility of capacity, of rates, what are good market rates out there. We have a data science team and AI to find the best information to help you, whether you're a carrier. So we serve the carriers out there as well as brokers. We serve shippers as well. My space is in the compliance area. We have onboarding, carrier monitoring, fraud. We have a great new tool that we just introduced called Risk Factors, which provides you with visibility of potential risk signals around carriers and who you may be working with. I'll talk more about that later. But we try to cover all the different areas and help the brokers, carriers, and shippers with the various aspects of their business. We also have factoring is another area that we have to serve carriers to help them keep running.
Yep. It's interesting. We talked for a long time before we hit record, and we spoke at a conference. We'll talk about that in a minute for a long time. And any company that started as load board 20, 30 years ago, like your company, they've evolved as the industry's evolved. So I think in the olden days, it was like, boy, that is silver bullet. If you can match a truck to a load, you've solved a big problem. That's right up there with like world hunger. But as time went on, companies like TruckSmart said, hey, the industry, not just trucking companies, not just shippers, not just brokers, the industry needs other tools, and they've all evolved. And I think to call anybody a load board company who's been around like as long as Truckstop is really minimizing what you do.
And you bring up a great point. So in 1995, and it's almost a myth now, but it's true. Our founder, Scott Moskrip, who was an engineer, a software developer, he was driving through Nevada, and there was a truck on the side of the road, and it said, need a load, call 1-800, whatever. And he's like, that's interesting. So he started looking into what that was all about. And he found that these truck drivers who are out there, when they go to deliver a load and they need a load to get back, so to be able to get that back haul, they don't drive empty, because you drive empty, you're driving on your dime. And there has to be a better way. And then he discovered that at truck stops, you go to a truck stop, there'd be a bulletin board up of loads in the area, and to call this number. And he's, that's interesting. So he put that on the internet. He made it so that brokers could post freight to this online load board, and then truck drivers could say, hey, I'm going to be in this area. I have this type of equipment. What is available? And started this matchmaking process. And really, Truckstop was founded around finding a better way. And then throughout the years, he would uncover new things that would be needed. And a lot of that initial investment was helping these truck drivers, these carriers out there, because there were a lot of tools for brokerages and for shippers, but the truck drivers didn't have the tools needed. So it started there, and then they started building out, supporting both sides of the industry and really helping everybody. And we're continuing to invest and innovate, finding that better way. And right now, trust is number one.
Yes. We talked about this quite a bit before we hit the record button. So I met you in Cleveland, I'm guessing 3 weeks ago, a month ago, at the NMFTA Cybersecurity Conference. So NMFTA is National Motor Freight Transportation Association. They are the standard setting organization for LTL. But this conference, the cybersecurity conference, was for everybody in the business. And I was down there. I was in Cleveland. It was great. I enjoyed the conference. I enjoyed meeting people like you. But it also, when you were down there talking to cybersecurity experts like yourself, I know a lot of people like you were saying, I'm not an expert. Everyone I've talked to there said, I'm not really an expert. And it gave me the impression that we're still, this battle has just begun. And nobody feels completely like, yes, we have all the answers. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But the companies that were down there, and every single one of them has made an investment in this already, and a big one. And it was shocking to hear some of the things I heard down there. And we'll get a little more into that. So first off, talk about what Truckstop was doing down at the cybersecurity conference in Cleveland, and then what you guys are doing about the cybersecurity. And before we hit record, I said cybersecurity and freight fraud, I always think of them as first cousins. And you said they're more like conjoined twins. So please talk about the challenge to our industry, and also, again, why you were at this cybersecurity conference.
Yeah. So if we just think about fraud, it's everywhere. It's in every industry. It's in everything we do. You get the text messages, scam calls. There's like the spam calls as well. You get emails coming in your inbox. Criminals are looking for opportunities. And this industry, when I joined a little over 8 years ago, part of what drove me to join Truckstop is how ripe the industry was for digitalization. And I came from Hewlett Packard. I was there for close to 18 years, and everything there was very digital. Everything was around technology. And Truckstop, even though they'd been that time around 20 so years, there's still more they need to do, and the industry as a whole. The industry has been ripe for digitalization, freight matching, everything else. And unfortunately, criminals got there first. Criminals like to make things easier, to automate. And so they're using technology, the things that we look at in our businesses to make it easier for us, AI and everything else. Criminals are using that as a tactic to attack. It's everywhere, and it just happens to be logistics is a space that they can compromise. They can find loopholes. And for us, why Truckstop was at the NMFTA, it was interesting because a colleague of mine, Brent Hutto, who's our chief relationship officer, was
I
at.
saw him there too.
Yep. And he was at the CSCMP and another conference, and talked to someone from NMFTA and about this conference for cybersecurity. And from my perspective, the NMFTA, we use them to get SCAF codes and be able to provide that information. And that, what do they do in cybersecurity? I learned at the conference what they do, and they do some wonderful things. All these things around helping protect the industry and helping the industry protect itself. Really, that's a key thing. And we wanted to be there. We wanted to learn, also talk about the things that we are doing. This industry, for us to thrive outside of fraud, we need to work together. And then with fraud, we need to double down. We need to work together, learn together. We need to make this the least hospitable place for criminals to operate. They're not going to go away. They're going to go to other spaces. And it's the path of least resistance is what's going to drive them. It's the pirates in the water. And right now, the water isn't being monitored or surveilled as much as it should be.
Yeah. And we all sat in some of those speeches, keynotes that were made. And there was the gentleman from the White House who spoke. They have some sort of cybersecurity task force there. And he talked about this huge increase in it. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But as you went to this conference, you would come away with the idea that, yeah, we have to do something. We all have to do our part. And I think, we called this topic trust and transparency. I truly believe we have to really start looking at our partners and saying, I have to partner with people who recognize the challenge we're all under, and who's going to value these things. And by the way, there's a lot of smaller companies, smaller brokers, mom and pop companies, and you go, how are they going? They're low margin. How are they going to make investments in technology? And I'm not just saying this to be salesy. I think that's why they need to partner with companies like Truckstop, who can make the investments. So I think that we're gonna all move towards organizations that we can trust, because otherwise we're in trouble.
Yeah, this industry is a community, and brokers, the carriers, the shippers, the technology providers, we all need to be working together. And this is when I talk to our customers. I said, I need to learn from you and you learn from me. And this is, I could see the things in front of me and you see what's behind me. And we cover all of our flanks, like working together to give us a broader perspective and higher visibility around risks. And we need to have that, to have the confidence to, and part of it, the learning from conferences like the NMFTA, and I've been through multiple fraud conferences, you get exposed to things that you didn't think could happen or weren't even aware. And so it's ignorance is just being uneducated, and being educated is critical to learn about these things and protect yourself to know how to respond. And that is the first step of preparation, is being aware of what could happen. And then what would you do if it does happen? You could also paralyze yourself, though, if you think everything bad is going to happen and then you can never move, and find that balance.
We'll get more into talk a little bit more about cybersecurity, a little bit more about what you guys are doing at Truckstop. And you're also going to give us some advice on what we can all do to protect our businesses. But first, tell us a little bit about you, Shawn. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the mothership that is Truckstop.
The mothership. Yeah, I grew up in a small town called Gresham, Oregon, outside of Portland, and went to the University of Oregon. So I'm a Duck.
Oh, congratulations. Looks like a good football year for you guys. You smashed my Wolverines.
Yeah, I went there when they only had 3 jerseys.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and there was no O, it was a UO, and we lost the Duck at one point with the Donald Duck, and then he came back. But anyway, no, I went to the University of Oregon. I threw javelin for them at Truck City, USA. So that was great. I studied, this is interesting, and I studied fine arts and computer science. I had a major in both. Not much overlap, but
left brain, right brain.
It's a left brain, right brain, and it is what I use to attack the problems that I see, is both sides of the brain thinking through that. But so anyways, yeah, dual major, computer science, fine arts, graphic design. And from there, I joined Hewlett Packard, and I worked at Hewlett Packard, as I mentioned, for about just under 18 years in a variety of different roles. I actually started out as in the design side, but then they started moving into process and working with customers. And then one of the things that was exciting for me in that journey, and I worked with this one group where we would support consultants and support enterprise customers in learning about complex problems, what they're doing, and figuring out how do we find a solution, and diving into that. And the way I think about things is I attack any of these complex problems, and how do you figure out what are they trying to do, optimize that, and find a solution that is viable for their business. And then at the end of my time there, I was in a group called the Enterprise Test Lab. And what we did there was figuring out how to model large enterprise fleets, installations of software, services, hardware, and being able to run them at scale and evaluate issues, quality problems. And then I would look at the data. And that's what got me into data, looking at data, finding the story in the data. So we'd say, okay, there's a failure. What are the signals that are signaling this failure? How is this a repeatable process? If it's repeatable, you can predict it. If you can figure out what's triggering it, you can protect against it. And so then we'd use this and to help refine the quality of our technology. That approach is similar to what I'm applying from fraud. And working there, I went through Six Sigma, green belt, black belt, and got a lot of that. So I didn't have tools to help optimize decisions around the right things to go after, which is also important as we're looking at the problems that we're facing with fraud, because we still all need to operate. We still need to move, and for businesses, that's the critical thing with this. And I use the analogy from a criminal fraud standpoint of fins in the water. Right now, everything is a shark. You're not going to go in the water. It's like, you have to be in the water, and they may be dolphins, but you can't tell above the surface. You have to get below the surface. And that's the things that we work on, is how do you get below the surface, find the information to let you know, is it safe to go in or not?
So when and why did you join Truckstop? Because, by the way, that just seems like such a departure. I'm from automotive, and to leave automotive to go to a little logistics company is, wait, that's a very big career jump. Leaving Hewlett Packard, which is one of those premier companies, to go to a smaller company, especially in logistics, seems like counterintuitive. What are you doing? I suspect you had some of that when you were talking to your friends about leaving. They're like, "Where are you going?"
Yeah. So I had one of my colleagues. He was our architect, and he had left, and he's going to go help a friend, is what he had said. And I'm like, okay. And then the architect that replaced him left to go join him. Okay. And then I had a colleague who left, and I heard she went to work at, I heard Truckstop, and I'm thinking, at a truck stop, and did you just give up?
I've had it. I'm going to go be a waitress. The hell with it.
Yeah. And then a month or so after, she gives me a call. I'm like, okay, how's it going? It's like, okay, let me just hear me out. I'm like, okay, I'll listen to you. And so she's telling me about this opportunity. She said, I need your help. And VP of integrations, I need you to come in, need to help in what we're doing. And I'm like, my wife is not going to let me leave. When I go home, talk to my wife is a lot smarter than I am and actually researched who Truckstop is. And said, no, you need to go. She's a software developer at HP. She's been there now 20 some years at the time. And you need to go there. They're not stupid. Go and help them out. Here's what they've been doing. They've been around this long. They double-digit revenue growth every year. And so it's like, go. Okay, I guess I'll do this, because at HP, people just moving around. I was often the fixer. Hey, we got this thing we don't quite understand. Go. And I go and I dig in and figure out what it is, and then how do we go and operationalize it. So I'm like, okay. So I joined, and it was definitely a culture shock from a technological and process standpoint. HP heavy around process methodology and everything else. It's a highly established business. And Truckstop was more family organic in how they operated. And part of what we've been working on over these 8+ years is, how do you establish some of those enterprise level rigors without losing the touch of the end customer, and really that empathy around what are the problems they're doing. And that's what each day inspires me, is how we're helping, especially the truck driver, the brokers, and everything. And when I had talked to my dad at the time, is trucks are always going to be moving. I think it's a good choice. Like, really? So it was enlightening to me. I learned a lot around logistics, but really a lot of it's the same types of things. What you're moving, what you're doing may be different, but how you go about attacking those problems, you can use similar muscles.
Yep. Leaving, like I left automotive, very mature space. You left HP, very mature company. When you get to logistics, and this is how I felt about it, was like, oh my God, this industry's so far behind in everything. But as I've talked to people like you over time, I've started to realize that it's easier to wire up and be completely own a process if it's a factory, or if you're doing stuff within your own business. When you connect a million trucking companies, or hundreds of thousands, whatever there is, and all these brokers and all of these shippers with all different systems, and a lot of times it's international, not necessarily with you guys, but you go, oh wait, that was a bigger problem than so it's easier to be mature when everybody's in the same ecosystem. We're not all in the same ecosystem until really recently. And I feel like companies like Truckstop has created those ecosystems. And these are companies that are much more difficult, because not all of them are making a ton of money. Not all of them. If I buy trucks that cost me $180,000, $200,000, I'm not particularly interested in a lot of tech spending.
And that term ecosystem, that's one I use a lot. And one thing is important, especially for us at Truckstop and for others in the technology space, we are not the ecosystem of our brokers, of our carriers, of the shippers that are out there. We are a part of their ecosystem. And so
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, how do we support their ecosystem, their people, what they're trying to go and do? And back to that transparency and trust is a critical piece of it. And so they have the trust, the confidence when we are a part of their ecosystem, when they've connected our ecosystems together so that they can operate more effectively.
Yep, I love it. I love it. So again, we were down at NMFTA Cybersecurity Conference in Cleveland, and I sat next to Shawn. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A lot of people thought we were rock stars. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, It was great. It was a great event. We got to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We all got to learn a lot about cybersecurity. And one of the things you just told me is this shocking stat about, I'm going to read it and then I want to hear you talk about it. You said that there's been a 400% increase in fraud. And is that over a few years, or what is
It's
the time?
over. So really it started at the end of 2022. And that's when I describe it as like patient zero, like COVID, when that happened, that pandemic. In the beginning, it's like, it's just the flu. Like, it's just double brokering. It's normal fraud. And it looked different.
It's isolated.
And there's towards the end, like it was around like September, I saw one, okay, that's interesting. And then October, November, something is different. And we immediately started to go to work and I added in 15 features around security protections and other capabilities in 5 months within our RMIS platform. And starting with January 4th, right after the holiday, we loaded all these new capabilities, kept iterating through. Because the critical piece is companies still need to be able to move, need to operate. So figure out, you could just go lock it all down, Fort Knox, and now the industry stops. Like, you got to find the right balance in there. But so it started to increase there, but it was year over year in the 2023 timeframe. 2024, it's a little bit lower than we saw in the 2023 numbers, but this is an extreme surge of fraud. And there's been cargo theft out there. Straight theft, which is actually stealing the trucks or stealing the goods off of the trucks, is still the prominent way that load is stolen. But the strategic theft is what we're seeing here, where impersonations, contact or identity theft, things like that was the new tactic that these criminals were shifting to.
Yeah, and if I could add something to that, as we brought guys like you in to help digitize this industry and automate this industry, we've seen tremendous efficiencies. And we all say, oh my God, I can maybe if a broker, I can say, we're doing so many loads per day more with our team because of these automations, because the data is all there. But that came with some downsides. We don't always know who we're working with. In the past, if I was a shipper and you were a carrier, I might call you up and I talk to you on the phone and we're texting or whatever. We have some sort of relationship that is not fully automated. And as we brought in that automation, the creeps saw an opportunity to take advantage, and that's what they're doing. So that efficiency in data that we all desperately need, we're not going back. We just have to get rid of the negative piece of that, which is I think freight fraud is wrong way to say it. The theft is horrible. No one wants theft, but that's isolated. The bigger problem is if somebody hacks into your system and is going to take your company down.
Yeah, and one thing to go back to the metric standpoint. The last time we saw a spike, not to the levels we're seeing now, was in 2009. And if you recall, what happened around in 2008 and 2009 was a recession. So economic instability, any instability, criminal activity rise. When there are riots in the street, there is looting. So opportunists that are of malicious intent will take advantage of chaos. And so when I've had people ask, like, why the surge? We had a pandemic with COVID. We had an influx of new carriers entering the market, legitimate companies, they're people say, hey, I can go join this. There's a need for truck drivers. They enter it. They found soon that, oh, there's actually a lot involved with being a truck driver, being a carrier, and not all of them made it. Well, that created a noise in there that then bad actors would start to infiltrate, and they started finding ways of, how do I insert myself into these systems and exploit all that volume, all the demand for truck drivers. And it started with them finding ways of just replacing an email with their email. And to your point on relationships, if you're relying on sending things digitally, you don't hear the voice of the person on the other line. You just get a response back. And hey, here's the load. Here is the information. Here's my rate confirmation. Here, go pick this load up. They know who the carrier is that you're going to because they're impersonating that carrier. And if The warehouse worker is just looking for a bill of lading, and here's the DOT number on the side, and they don't really pay attention to that DOT number being on a cardboard placard duct taped to the side, which is actually a thing that would happen. And they'd get that truck loaded because the warehouses were, you're paying the workers on the turn on how quickly you get trucks moving because they need to get them going.
Yeah. For a long time, we could be a little sloppy because we didn't have this problem. And I think we were. And now we have that problem. And so that old term, trust but verify, that's what we need to get to is I want to be able to trust my partners, but my partners also have to meet my very high standards. Otherwise, we're all going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I flip that. I say verify, then trust.
There you go.
But it is critical for all people. And it starts with a human. And we talk about protecting yourself, the individuals. The surface area for fraud is everything. It is the people, it is the processes, it is the systems. They're going to find a way to compromise anything that is compromisable. And so if people aren't educated on what to look for, and if your objectives, what you're rated on is how quickly you get something done, how quickly you get that load covered, how quickly you get that truck filled, that's your focus. And so educating them on the signals is important.
So the guy from the federal government who gave one of the keynotes at the conference, he said a lot of the cybersecurity is from state actors. I think he mentioned, first and foremost, the biggest is People's Republic of China. He also mentioned much smaller, but still a problem, Russia, Iran, I think North Korea. And they said the scope and the scale has grown enormously. And they said they used to hack into certain things to try and get money. He says now they seem to be hacking into everything they can get hacked into, schools, anything infrastructure related. And he also mentioned that in the case of a national emergency, God forbid we have one, if you wanted to take down in a country, you undermine the supply chains. And right now, if you just said, hey, 10% of the trucks in our country are offline, well, what does that mean? It means that empty shelves. It means food gets rotten and factories don't open. It is a critical part of the industry. We say it on the podcast all the time. Trucking is the backbone of business, backbone of the country. Supply chains are the backbone of the country. That's what they're going after in a lot of these cases. So it's one thing when somebody says, hey, they just wanted to steal a container or a truckload of Xboxes. That's awful. We got to prevent that. But the bigger problem is undermining the entire industry where we work.
Yeah, the motivations may differ. The tactics are going to be the same. A lot of the things that I see out there are ones who are trying to profit financially. It's a business for them. It is not a international espionage or something where they're trying to take down the country, but it's the same entry points. And from the thieves that are trying to steal the cargo, they're going to compromise you, try to understand what the load is. They're going to use that to determine, do we steal this outright? Do they have their own trucks? Now they're hiring other trucks that may not even realize it's not their load to pick up. And then, double brokering, but then you have ones that are stealing that or sending a carrier to a different warehouse and then holding it hostage and using that for financial gain. But a lot of the things are there. But again, how they get access is going to be similar. Now, what was brought up at that conference, though, which was something I hadn't heard of, was the systems, the trucks themselves on, can you get into those systems to hack them and compromise the trucks so they can't move? But you bring up from a cybersecurity standpoint, getting into critical shipper broker systems to be able to shut them down, hitting those upstream nodes that you can then take down full components of the industry. That is even more daunting, but it's same protections that you need to use. And we do cybersecurity training here all the time. We have our cybersecurity department, the information security group, will send us fake emails all the time. They're really good. And it's teaching us to be always on the lookout, always be aware, and to be protecting yourself. And this is a critical thing we talk about for how you can protect yourself. Like, educate your people on the tactics and have a process for if something doesn't look right, who do they go to? Because if people don't know where to go, they feel alone. And if they feel pressure to make a decision quickly, and if they don't have the education behind it, it could be reckless.
Yes, I heard this at the cybersecurity conference. Everyone was very open and about sharing some of the learnings they had, and they said we need to have the human firewall, which is make sure the humans are not clicking on the wrong thing. But then somebody said, also, you can't be too critical of somebody who screws up. They said because if I go into your office and say, "Hey, Shawn, I clicked on something I shouldn't have clicked on," you go, "Okay, let's take care of it." Now, if you scream bloody murder and threaten to have me fired, then I'm going to deny that I clicked on anything. And they said we have to build that human firewall, but then it has to be a top-down technology discussion also. And this is crazy. So what can people listening right now, what can they do? Give us some tips. And by the way, one of the tips I'm going to say is you need to work with companies you need to partner with companies that care about cybersecurity. If you say, "Oh, we're doing everything perfect," this is a business of partners. So you better make sure your partners have made the right investments, because it's not going to be the small trucking companies that make the investment. They can't. That's not their business. It's not going to be the small brokers who can always make the investment in technology. They have to partner with companies like Truckstop that have made the investments. They can afford the big IT teams that constantly upgrade.
Yeah, and that's where we work to try and help all sizes, and especially the smaller ones. What can we have to help them where they don't have a department? They have a hat that they wear depending upon the day, and we are extremely passionate about this industry and helping it thrive, and getting it to a stage the bad actors leave these waters, go somewhere else. But it's when the things that we do, and this is what companies need to be doing, and individuals, it's people, processes, systems, and technology. You need to have all of these within there. And part of the technology is rely on others. There are some that do it really well. Utilize, like, we didn't build everything that we use. We rely on partners to help us with our systems. And even from a security standpoint, it's like, partner with those, and then continue to communicate with them to understand where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do, and work together. From, you mentioned when there is an incident, going and being open and not scolding someone. It's like, when I talk to customers, hey, when you have an incident, let us know. We need to understand what happened, because we actually have a SWAT team. I'm part of that. I do digital forensics around, okay, what happened? What was the information you saw? I'm gonna look across our systems. Was what information is in there? Taking it back to what I was talking about on quality assurance back at HP, on looking at, is this a predictable signal? Can we detect it and protect against it? Like, same thing here with fraud. Are the signals clear? Because the bad actors, they know what you're looking for. They know the red flags, and they are getting extremely sophisticated around not triggering those flags. You think about the spy movies and stuff, and like Mission Impossible and going around the lasers and everything. They could see they have countermeasures to counter your countermeasures and your protections. And so you have to have multiple different things, but it starts with the conversation, that human touch, having your frontline folks who are talking. If you're on the brokerage side, your carrier sales team talking to a carrier, or you're a carrier talking to a broker, like, what are the things that need to be thinking about? The spidey senses. I use the analogy of, like, imagine you have your mom's money or your favorite grandma or whatever, and you're going to hand it over to somebody for a loan. Would you give it to this person? If not, what are the signals that tells you, no, I don't trust this person, that they're going to pay me back? Those are the things you need to be thinking about. And we need to use our human aspects to be able to have these relationships, talk to the person, which you lose in the digital world. And it's critical in this space, because the digital signals mask the presence or the identity of who's on the other side. And so that's an important thing to build that in the human part of it, but then having technologies to help also screen out, because it can be overwhelming. So you need to have these layers of protection, security within your systems.
It came up not so long ago on my podcast. Somebody said, yeah, if you can do the onboarding right, and you guys have a tool, is it RMIS? Is that it?
RMIS, yep.
And they said, if you can do the onboarding of your carrier partners correctly, that is a big step in the right direction. So please talk about what is RMI. First up, what does it stand for? And then what is it?
Yeah, so it's Registry, Monitoring, and Insurance Services. And they were, years ago, a partner of Truckstop's. And then we went and we had created our own onboarding platform, but then we went and acquired RMIS back in 2021. And then we've been working on integrating and building that into Truckstop. Now, RMIS, it has onboarding, so carriers can get set up with you. You can collect the necessary paperwork, agreements, W-9, additional information you're looking for from them, and basically get them into your network. And then the onboard is just one piece of this, the continual monitoring. I talk about layers of trust. And this is where we've been adding in a lot of protection, security, et cetera. Because when RMIS was founded, it was around frictionless experience, because that is what customers demanded. They need to make this easy. We don't want to put any burden on carriers to be able to go and onboard. If it's frictionless, it's easy. It could be easy for bad actors. So we've had to add a lot of things in there and find that right amount of friction so that when they're coming in, you have the confidence on who is getting set up with you. And so we, as part of that, in the onboarding you mentioned, we partnered with, again, partners, a company called Ping. And Ping is similar to, if you've been to the airport, Clear, where they do face scanning and things like that. They do identity verification with Ping, but they also have access management. So we're using them as a technology provider around security to authenticate and verify who is entering the system. But coming in is one part. And then when you go to the airport, they check your ID, and then you go through the x-ray scanners. Well, we're adding in more things to then evaluate not just who you are, but who you are representing to find signals. And I mentioned Risk Factors, a new tool that we introduced that's bringing all these decades of data, billions of points of data, and our expertise around risk signals, and then using AI and our data science teams to give those flags. We are baking that into the onboarding process to stop the highest risk carriers from entering. But then when you go to the airport, you get in, there's always surveillance in there, and even on the plane, there is a marshal on there, continuously monitoring for risks. And because the information, this is coming from the FMCSA and other sources, and if any of those secondary systems get compromised, that information is compromised. So we've added in things around like contact change, recency, a virtual phone. And so back to digitalization, hiding behind digital information. Bad actors like to use virtual services. So virtual phone was something, and we work with the local law enforcement as well as federal. And the federal law enforcement, when we met with them back in 2023, they said, hey, we're seeing every one of these bad actors are using a virtual phone because it's non-traceable. It's a non-fixed VoIP, voice over IP.
Okay. Which a lot of companies use that are legit too, obviously.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of your office unit or offices will use fixed VoIP. It's tied to an address. It is traceable. But the non-fixed VoIP, it is also used by call centers because it's easy to stand up a new phone number. And so it is not an immediate signal for a bad actor, but it is a signal that in combination with other things. Investigate. And that's the thing that for us, now, the baddest of the bad, and ones that we've been made aware of a bad actor that's committed fraud, we'll kick them out of the systems and we will alert parties. But there's other things that we're going to provide information. We're going to give you the signals that you can then build into your processes. Because ultimately, you own your risk. And it's like the autonomous cars. You still need to have your hands near the steering wheel in case it's going to make a bad decision or there's something going to happen, to be ready to take over. So there's things that we're partnering with our customers, that technology to help them help themselves, help them protect themselves, and working on combining these. And so with RMIS, that continuous monitoring, we have business rules, a very extensive business rule system that then you can adjust the thresholds based on your needs and decide what you want to be doing. And something else in here, in addition to your processes, is having policies for certain circumstances, targeting commodities, high valued freight, going in a lane that if you're subscribed with services like Verisk and the CargoNet, hey, this is a hot lane right now that there's higher frequency of fraud. Have additional policies to evaluate that differently than you would normally. Elevated uh, thresholds that you have, as well as late in the day or on a Friday before a holiday. Because on a Friday before a holiday, are you thinking about your job or are you thinking about what you're going to be doing that weekend? And we call it Fraud Friday because they take advantage of moments of potential, I don't want to call it weakness, but it is your guard is down a little bit. And
You're at the Christmas party instead of doing your job.
and that was one of the things you talk about, the ransomware attacks. A lot of those things are going to happen around holidays or other times. They're trying to get you when your people may not be around or you may not be able to respond quick enough. And one of the things, so at Truckstop, not only did they invest in the technology and tools to help, they invested in a team. So in 2003, they built out an assurance team to help. And this is marketplace security. They had folks there. So we have people and processes around that. And when someone has an event, something happens, or we're made aware of compromised identities, they're in there and helping surveil the system, get bad actors out, notify folks. And then that's who I work with as well. But it's a continuous refinement of processes, new tactics. And this is an important thing on sharing within this industry and the community. You learn about, hey, this happened and here's how it happened. Oh, hadn't seen that before. Let's add that in. And what we are really excited about our risk factors tool is we're continuously adding things in there, finding ways to, since a majority of carriers are participating in our load board as well as within RMIS, they are onboarding with the brokerages. We have patterns of activity, patterns of behavior, things that can be difficult for you to mask, and the sheer presence of you using a virtual private network, a VPN, or a virtual phone is a signal, especially if it used to be a cell phone or a landline, or it used to be a dedicated IP, and now it's not, and now it's coming from some masks. So those are things that we're working on.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It reminds me, I'm an automotive guy originally, and I remember we used to have cars stolen. And so we started working on solutions to prevent cars from being stolen. And we never used the term carjack. Carjackings weren't a thing. Why would they be? Because it was easy to go. You just you unlock it and you go in, you hotwire it, and you're all set. Teenagers could steal a car. You see it on TV all the time, how quickly you can hotwire an old car. But when we made that really difficult, they started saying, okay, what I'll do is I'll wait till there's a red light. I'm going to walk up and put a gun in this guy's face and say, get out of your car. So we will always see the bad actors migrate. And so you said something when we were prepping, we came up with this cool title, Trust and Transparency, the Power of Truckstop's Network. We had resiliency in here because, and I think I learned this at the cybersecurity conference from talking to you and some other people, which was, even the best companies can be hacked if there's a dedicated enough group after that. And so we have to also build in some resiliency where you say, yes, we got hacked and it took us ideally an hour to get back to full. We've isolated. We've been able to get away from it. We're still serving our customers. We're not putting anyone else at risk. I know that's part of what you guys are doing at your companies. So talk about that for just a minute. What can we all do on the resiliency front?
Yeah, resiliency is critical, and it starts with awareness. So educating and then being prepared for when this happens, what do we do? And so we talk about, like, from a cargo theft standpoint, if you're on the broker side or a shipper, do you know the law enforcement, like who you call? What information do they typically want to have and be prepared to be able to provide that? Do you have people that could go and do that? So being ready, being informed, so that while it is an emergency, you're able to do it with a clear mind on here's steps we need to go through, and who do I contact, including partners. And so when there is a situation, there's times where we'd get contacted and we'll pull together information. Here's what we've seen, and we've worked with law enforcement on their behalf. We'll get questions like, why don't you guys report that? It's not our property. We are a supporter, so we can help support you in this. But you ultimately, you need to be the one that is filing the claim or the one that is engaging law enforcement in that. And so having a plan, having a process, having an escalation path. So the frontline team, the carrier sales or whoever, who do they contact if there's something, especially if they're just the screening, vetting. Like, how do you handle if there's something that they just want to ask a question about? So, do you have a person that can answer? So they're not spending all this time. They can just contact you and you say, okay, you take 5 minutes to go and you have a process there. But resiliency, understanding what you need to do, how you can recover from what it is and be ready so that it doesn't take down everything as you're scrambling. So it's both on the cyber side, on the cargo side, from a carrier standpoint, if you're driving, if there's something going on and it does not feel right, that, okay, I picked up this load, that the person I'm talking to, the dispatcher, is giving me some information that doesn't seem right, then what do you do? How, and there's, and some of us you can contact. So we have I mentioned that security team, security@truckstop.com. You can contact our team and we'll look and we'll work to help you in that. But you got to have a plan for all the different situations, but you need to also invest in having the protections up front from a secured process and a technology standpoint.
I love what you said earlier about spidey senses, because somebody said to me, "What are you doing about cybersecurity?" I said, "I'm not an expert in it. I just talk to the experts. They're like you." And I said, "But I do know this. You're not getting ripped off by the guy you've been working with for 5 years. You're not getting ripped off by the guy you talk on the phone to all the time." I said, "It's the companies that you go, hey, this guy's a little cheaper. I know they don't have a website and they only text me. We're going to work with them anyway. I've never heard of them. No one at Truckstop doesn't know who they are, but I want to work with them anyway." That's not using your common sense. So I always think, when in doubt, use your spidey senses. Anyway, let's wrap this bad boy up. So I want to talk about who you got. You guys serve 3 groups: carriers, brokers and 3PLs, and then shippers. So what do you guys do for carriers?
Yeah. So for carriers, I've touched on a lot of this with the load board, having that out there. We have a dedicated mobile app as well, because the carriers are moving and they don't always have a laptop. So having that for them to be able to go and find freight, create those relationships, or reaffirm an established relationship and serve them that way. I mentioned the factoring solution we have for those who can't wait for that scheduled payment, having that in place.
A lot of companies are using factoring these days. It's almost the norm, isn't it?
And as part of the factoring is, so we're going to go, they deal with fraud as well and verifying who it is, the parties on both sides, just to be able to help. And really, it's protecting against fraud, which starts with the confidence in relationships and that trust, is part of our culture. And it's across everything that we're doing. Our marketplace, our goal is to be the most trusted marketplace in the industry. That when you are moving freight that is out within our load board, you can trust that this is coming from an authentic brokerage or shipper there. And so as a carrier, because they get scammed in these as well through the double brokering, and they may not get paid for that load. They may be moving it to an undisclosed warehouse and then being held hostage.
Yes.
And so
it's also a reputational risk. So this is why you want to partner with someone like Truckstop, who will help you, because you're not experts in this. If you're a carrier, you're doing the best you can, but Truckstop is an expert. That's why you partner with them.
Yeah, and helping, to your point on the reputation, that is a critical thing. And that is an area we are really investing in them, especially because it's difficult. If you're a one truck operation, and even though you've been driving for 20, 30 years, but you're now on your own, how do you get out there and establish yourself? So we have things we're trying to work with them around that. But then having that confidence, we have tools for them to find the best loads out there for them. And so there's a lot of different things that we do to invest with them. We've partnered with the Owner Operator Independent Driver Association, OIDA, working with them to help those carriers out there and larger carriers as well. And there's things at different scales that we have in place and just providing them with the tools. We have a variety of things out there, blogs and everything else, is to help with everything that they do and their relationships. And then on the broker side, same things. And a lot of from the risk protection double brokering starts at the broker side. Really, it's if they can trust the carrier they're giving to, that they're not a double broker, the carrier on the other end, the victim on that side, won't be impacted. But working with the brokers, we have tools as well, that load board where they can put their loads out there. We have other tools around rates. And you talk about the spidey senses. One thing is knowing what the going market rate is for this. And so if someone comes to you, if you're a broker and they came with a very low rate and they're anxious, and okay, this is too good to be true. Same thing on the carrier side, that rate visibility is there as well. If they're coming to you with a high rate and they're wanting to move, they're nondescript on things that, okay, they could be double brokering this. So both sides, we're helping them and empowering them. Broker side with the various capacity tools, compliance, and onboarding, having that in place so they can have confidence on that. And really, we want to help companies run more effectively so they can focus on the relationships. So if you can have tools that provide a trusted backbone to your processes, you have more time to spend having a conversation with the other party. And shipper side, the load board, not as much for the shippers. Usually it's going through a 3PL or brokerage side, but on the compliance side, we have shippers that are using that, especially when they have dedicated capacity. They have their own trucks or needing to understand those risks. So we work with them there. The risk factor tool, what we love about that is it's able to get to you and touch on this, where we are not your ecosystem. We are just a part of your ecosystem. So how do we help you where your people are? And risk factors can run as an extension in a browser. And you look up by MC, DOT, phone number, email of a carrier, and it's going to bring you up, especially phone number and email. Are there multiple carriers that are using that? Doesn't mean they're bad. They could be going through a setup service, but ask questions. Understand what that is. To transparency, which is in the title of the podcast here. You need to understand and have clear visibility of who this is. Clear eyes, open eyes on what this is, so you can then know, can I trust them? And then we just released here an add-in for Outlook. So as emails are coming in, because a lot of those communications coming from load boards and other areas come through email, it's going to go and it's going to scrape the email, bring up the carriers that it sees based upon that information and what the risks are. And so also I mentioned with the ping identity verification, it's going to give you the status. Have they completed ID verification or not? Have they gone through that? And we provide that flexibility. So in our onboarding, you could force everybody who's coming in must do this ID check, where it's going to take a picture of your face, picture of your ID, has to match. But you could have it where you don't require it, but you have it as a screening process. So we provide you full visibility onto that. And we continue to add more and more of this information as we have that to provide visibility so you can optimize. And the critical thing here is right now, everyone is fully vested and they're slowing down their processes to help protect themselves against fraud. Capacity is a little loose right now, so they're able to handle that. When the market changes, because the market always goes and changes, go through cycles, and capacity is tight, you have less time to make a decision. So right now, you got to build your muscle memory. You got to establish your processes, train your people, have repeated processes that's continuing to evolve, because fraud, just as the industry is evolving, fraud is evolving faster. So what are you doing about that? How are you doing this communication and training? And who are you partnering with? Can they help you in your journey? And that's our dedication here. Is we want to be your trusted partner in all aspects of your logistics lifecycle, and just to help you, at least starting with the mindset and education, and then with the tools, we want to be there for you.
Yep. I love that. And again, this is always evolving. Before we hit the record button, we were using, I guess it's the analogy that if I wanted to protect my house, I could get an alarm system. And then I can go one step further and get some sensors for on my deck or on my porch. I could get some lighting systems. I could get an armed guard and put them in my living room, and maybe some guards outside. But if the Navy SEALs decide they're coming in my house that night, they're coming in the house. And that's the reality of this situation, is that the bar is always getting higher. And if somebody's dedicated enough, they're going to get in. And so we have to, first off, try and get rid of the low hanging fruit, Don't be an easy victim, but also have the backup, and that have all. I guess if we have a problem, it's one thing. It's a whole nother thing if we said we never anticipated this problem.
Yep. And that's resiliency starts with anticipation, which starts with education and preparation. And so it's everyone is a target. How do you make yourself not the easy one? And these are opportunists. And so just making it difficult for them to come to you and they go to the next one.
Yeah. So we're helping you not walk down the dark alley at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Make the best decision for your business.
Anyway, let me summarize, and then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. I'm talking to my friend Shawn Rasmor. We're talking about trust and transparency, the power of Truckstop's network. I met Shawn at the cybersecurity conference, so that's what we've been talking about today. And we're talking about the challenges we face in this industry, and it is significant. It came out. I was at the Trimble conference not so long ago. That was one of the number one things talked about out at the Trimble conference. They do the trucking tech stack. They were talking about it. And then obviously a dedicated conference by NMFTA, and they did a wonderful job down in Cleveland, loved it. And we talked about the challenges facing the industry with this 400% increase in fraud since 2022. We all are hearing about it. There's the fraud, the cargo theft that we've been having, but there's also cybersecurity, which is taking down companies, and ransomware, all sorts of problems. And then Shawn talked about some of the things we can do. And then last but not least, you talked about what Truckstop traditionally has done, which is the load board, and then really growing well beyond that, the data and the intelligence. Today, we talked about also the factoring, super important. A lot of people do factoring because it might cost you a little money to get it, but the nice thing about it is it's all secure because Truckstop's doing it. So you might pay a little bit for the security of that. Let's talk about the compliance software that you guys have, RMIS. Everyone uses that. And then last but not least, we talked about risk factors. Anyway, put a big old bow around this one, Shawn Rasmor.
Yeah, it's scary out there, but we are here to be with you to help you in this journey. We want to be that trusted partner, and ultimately this community. This industry is critical. All the trucks moving down that road, we need them. And our goal here is to help you, to help the truck drivers, the brokers, the shippers out there, and provide you with the tools to help your team so you can run. And the things that keep you up at night, we want you to have a good night's sleep. So we want to help you there. We are there for you. Our teams are here. We have the information. I'm there. I tell folks, like, love it if you use us, but I'm here to help. I want to make sure you have a process. You have the people, you have tools. Invest in this. This is critical. If not with us, with somebody, but we are there to help you, help yourselves out there, protect yourselves. It's critical there. I'm so glad I joined the industry, and I joined Truckstop, and even though it may be dark right now, it's a bright future. What we need to do, we'll only get there if we do it together, working through this. But I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, no problem.
Today, Joe, and bringing me on.
I'm excited to talk to you about this. I think it's a great topic, and I really learned a lot from talking to you and sitting with you at dinner at the cybersecurity conference. But I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any of the links you and your marketing team give me. I think you have some might have an internal podcast or something. Your marketing team will put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, Brent Hutto, who I mentioned, he has Freight Nation out there, but our LinkedIn, go to Truckstop on LinkedIn, some great things.
I'll put all those links in, and I'll also put my interview with Brent Hutto in the show notes. I interviewed him a few years ago, great guy. And I asked you earlier before we hit record, what conferences we see you at. And then it occurred to me that Truckstop at every single conference. So I'm not going to belabor that point.
Yeah, we'll be everywhere. The next ones, we have
Freightwaves. This will probably publish after Freightwaves, but you guys are everywhere.
Yeah, we'll be at Freightwaves, and actually I'll be at the TAPA conference. There's more as we get more aware, like the NMFTA, we didn't know about it until we learned, but out there in the community, we want to be there and learn and be part of this, to work with you all there. Yeah, we are, and if you don't see us where you think you should see us, let us know. And again, it is awareness, and we are always trying to stay connected and help this industry. So,
yep. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time, Shawn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward.
You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.